Hi everyone, welcome. I hope you're doing well. In this lesson we have another very important verb for you in Spanish. This is the verb pensar, to think. And pensar is one of the E to IE stem changing verbs. We've had a couple in the last two lessons. We've had stem changing verbs. So we're going to continue with that in this lesson because this is another very important stem changing verb. So why do we call it a stem changing verb? Well, you have to ask the question, what is the stem? When you remove the AR, ER, or IR from an infinitive, which is a verb that hasn't been conjugated yet, what you're left with is what we call the root or the stem. So if I remove the AR, I'm left with the stem. And the reason why we call this a stem changing verb is because, well, for regular verbs, the stem will not change. A verb like hablar, for example, the stem HABL stays the same all through the conjugation. But for a stem changing verb, there is a change in the stem. That's why we call it a stem changing verb. So for this particular verb, the E will change to IE in some of the forms, not all of them. Now, knowing which forms change and which forms don't is really just a matter of practice. Native speakers memorize this through practice, so you can do the same. So we'll practice with that in this lesson. Okay, so we're going to start with the first form. We want to conjugate this in the present tense, and the first form actually has the stem change. So since it's a stem changing verb, I'm just showing you the forms. So we have pienso. Pienso. Notice the E changed to an IE. So pienso means I think, or I do think, or I am thinking. Now the tu form. The tu form is piensas. Piensas, also we have the stem change. Piensas means you think, you do think, or you are thinking. We also have the vos form, which is used in South America, in Argentina, for example. So instead of using tu, they'll use the vos, and it has its own form, which is pensas. And notice the vos form does not have the stem change, pensas. And notice also the accent shifts to the end of the word, so pensas. Okay, for the usted, el, ella form, we also have the stem change, piensa, piensa. So usted piensa, you think, él piensa, he thinks, ella piensa, she thinks. Nosotros form, no stem change. Notice it's just the E. And of course this affects the pronunciation because the sound here is e. Pensamos, pensamos. Notice that the sound for the IE is ye, ye. Piensa, pensamos, piensa, pensamos. Do you hear the difference? Piensa, pensamos. Okay, so pensamos, we think. We do think, we are thinking. The vosotros form, or vosotras, which is used in Spain, does not have the stem change. Pensáis, pensáis. Notice just the e, pensáis. Okay? And then finally the ustedes, ellos, ellas form also has the stem change. Piensan, piensan. Ustedes piensan, you think. Ellos piensan, they think. Ellas piensan, they think. And there we have it. This is the conjugation of the verb pensar in the present tense. It's a stem changing verb. So let's practice a little bit. So how would you say I think? I think. Quiz yourself. How do you say I think? It can also be I do think or I am thinking. So in Spanish that simply would be pienso, I think. If you want to say something, make it a complete thought, I think a lot. Pienso mucho. He thinks. Él piensa. She thinks. Ella piensa. We think. Pensamos. Okay, did you get all those right? So good job so far. If you got all those right, then you're doing well. If not, try this little part again. Play it a couple more times until you can answer each question before I show you the answer. Okay, let's try a little bit more practice. How do you think you would ask in Spanish, what do you think, using the tu, the informal form? How would you ask somebody, what do you think? Remember what is que? So just put that together with the form of the verb, and you've got ¿qué piensas? Sometimes your friend might ask you for an opinion. What do you think about something? They'll say, ¿qué piensas? What do you think? If you want to say, I think that, and we're not going to say the whole sentence, but you can start off many sentences by saying, well, I think that it's good, or I think that it's bad, or I think that we should do something else, something like that. So to start off, I think that in Spanish is pienso que. So you'll hear a lot of people giving their opinions will say pienso followed by que, and then the rest of the idea. Okay, so if you want to say, I think that it is good, so you already know the pienso que. You could just simply say pienso que es bueno. I think that it's good. I think that I am ready. Okay, so we know we have the pienso que. And I am, in this case with the adjective ready, is estoy, but if you're a male, you'll use one form of the adjective. A female, you'll use another. So we have pienso que estoy listo. I think that I'm ready. But for females, you would say pienso que estoy lista. I think that I'm ready. How about I think that you are right? So we have pienso que, you are right. We did have a lesson on this with verb forms that use tener, special verb forms. And so this one would be pienso que tienes razón. So tener razón means to be right. For example, if I want to say I'm right, I would say tengo razón, which literally means I have reason, but it translates to English as I am right. So if I want to say you're right, I would say pienso que tienes razón. If you want to find that lesson, you can go back just in my videos and you'll find all the tener expressions. Okay, so did you get all those right? Okay, all right, great job. So let's continue. Okay, so here's another structure that we use the verb pensar with. So pensar en plus a noun that represents a person means to think about someone. So for example, if I want to say I'm thinking about my father, you know how to say mi padre. So we have to use pensar conjugated with en, and the whole thing would be pienso en mi padre. Sorry, those were my vocal dogs in the background. Okay, so here's the next one. I'm thinking about my girlfriend. So my girlfriend is mi novia. So how do you think you would say that? Pienso en mi novia. Remember, this can also mean I'm thinking about or I think about in the present tense. Remember, verbs in the present tense can have more than one meaning. So pienso can mean I think, I do think, or I am thinking. So pienso en mi novia can mean I think about my girlfriend, I do think about my girlfriend, or I'm thinking about my girlfriend, just depending on context. Okay, next one. I'm thinking about my friend. Notice M for masculine, male friend. Because we have el amigo and la amiga for friend, so we're going to go with el amigo. So the answer is pienso en mi amigo. I'm thinking about my dog. Pienso en mi perro. And I'm thinking about my town. Maybe you come from a small town, little town. You might say, pienso en mi pueblo. And by the way, pueblo can also mean people. So this could mean I'm thinking about my people. Pienso en mi pueblo. Okay, so another very important use of the verb pensar. This is a very important verb. There's a lot of things you can do with it. And when we conjugate pensar and follow it with an infinitive, it has the meaning to think about doing something or to plan on doing something. That's the general idea. So, let's just do a little practice here. We have infinitives followed by the conjugated forms. If I wanted to say, I'm thinking about going, I would say, pienso ir. Or, you're thinking about going, piensas ir. Or, using the voz, pensas ir. He's thinking about going. Él piensa ir. We're thinking about going. Pensamos ir. You're thinking about going. This is the plural you in Spain. So people you know well in Spain, you would say pensáis ir. You're thinking about going. And then ustedes, ellos, or ellas. Let's say ellos, in this case. They're thinking about going. Ellos piensan ir. And we can have other infinitives besides ir. So you could say, for example, I'm thinking about studying, like maybe this afternoon I'm thinking about studying, pienso estudiar. Or I'm thinking about working, pienso trabajar. Or we're thinking about studying, pensamos estudiar. Or we're thinking about working, pensamos trabajar. So you can express a lot of different ideas just with one conjugated verb and a few infinitives. And let me just throw in a reminder here that if you're really wanting to advance in Spanish, to advance your knowledge and advance your abilities, one suggestion that I always give is be sure that you know how to conjugate verbs and learn as many infinitives as possible so that when you encounter a verb like pensar that takes an infinitive after one of its conjugated forms, you can really say a lot, you can do a lot. It really packs a punch. Okay, one final thing. Remember, it's very easy to convert a statement into a yes or no question by simply changing the order of the conjugated form and the subject pronoun. So, for example, if I wanted to make questions here, if I said, él piensa, that's a statement, he thinks, but if I wanted to ask the question, does he think, I would say piensa él. So what happens with Spanish also is the subject pronouns are not necessary when the ending tells you what the subject is. So for example, pienso, yo pienso would become pienso yo, do I think, or tú piensas would become piensas tú, do you think? So if I wanted to ask the question, I don't need the subject pronoun, so the information that's here is enough. For example, if I wanted to ask someone, are you thinking about going? I would just simply say, piensas ir. I could say, piensas tú ir, but it's not the tú is not necessary. And in cases where it's not necessary, we use it maybe just to emphasize. So, for example, in English, I might say, are you thinking about going? Then I would say in Spanish, piensas tú ir. But if I just want to say, are you thinking about going? Then I would just simply say, piensas ir. So, are you thinking about going? Piensas ir. Are you thinking about studying? Piensas estudiar? Are you thinking about studying this afternoon? You know, you can add things to it. Piensas estudiar esta tarde? Are you thinking about working? Piensas trabajar? Are you thinking about working tomorrow? Piensas trabajar mañana? And that's it. You can very easily make a bunch of different questions with the same information that's here. Okay, well, that's it for this lesson. I hope you found it helpful. If you did find it helpful, I would appreciate it very much if you'd give it a like. To continue learning Spanish and go on to another lesson, click on the video that appears here on your screen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Hasta pronto.